The Notebook of Doom. Rumble of the Coaster Ghost. Chapter 1, The New Girl. Alexander Bopp was an expert at two things, fighting monsters and passing super-secret notes in class. And today, he was passing a note about monster fighting. Alexander glanced at his teacher, Dr. Tallow. She was writing on the board. He passed the note back to his two best friends, Rip and Nicky. They sat in the back row. Dr. Tallow turned around just as the note "Be a good student, like me" reached Nicky. Nicky sank into her hoodie. "Nicky, dearie," she said with an extra-wide smile. "Bring me the note, please." Yikes, thought Alexander. I'm glad I wrote fruitcake instead of monsters. It would be a shame for you to miss out on our surprise field trip tomorrow, Nicky, Dr. Tallow continued. Please bring me that note. Yeah, Nicky, said Rip, sitting up straight. Nicky shot Rip a look. Then she handed the note to Dr. Tallow. All right, class, said Dr. Tallow, pocketing the note. Now about that surprise. Tomorrow, we'll be taking a field trip to an amusement park. The students cheered. Woo-hoo-hoo! Rip howled. An amusement park? On a school day? Knock knock. A serious-looking woman in a serious-looking suit was at the door. It was the school principal, Ms. Vanderpants. Dr. Tallow, I'm here with your new student, she said. She'll start school tomorrow. A shy-looking girl stepped into the room. Alexander looked back at Rip and Nicky, who were grinning. They had all met Dottie at summer camp. Welcome to Sturmont Elementary, Dottie, said Dr. Tallow. We're glad to have you. Alexander remembered his very first day at school. His teacher had called him Salamander, which had become his nickname. Hi, Dottie, said Alexander. Dottie gave Alexander a little wave. Brying. Okay, dearies, said Dr. Tallow. Give me your permission slips on the way out. Alexander handed in his slip. Chapter 2, Soup's On. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky took the long way home. They followed a path through the woods that led to an old caboose with the letters SSMP on the side. Super Secret Monster Patrol. Club members. Alexander, the trusty leader. Nicky, brave and smart. Rip, loud and strong. But mostly loud. The three friends stepped inside SSMP. Headquarters. A map of Sturmont hung on one wall, near a shelf full of random objects. I'm glad we stopped here, said Alexander. He loaded his backpack with monster fighting gear. Don't forget the notebook, said Rip. Already in here, said Alexander. I never go anywhere without it. He pulled a beat-up notebook from inside the backpack. Now we'll be ready to fight all kinds of monsters, Alexander said. Nicky coughed. You mean bad monsters, right? She said. Of course, said Alexander. Nicky was actually a good monster, called a jampire. Jampires. Like, seeing in the dark, eating anything red and juicy. Dislike, sunlight. You know, said Rip, putting his feet on the table, Dr. Tallow is an awesome teacher. Her classroom pet zone is super fun, and now she's letting us ride roller coasters. Yeah, whatever, Nicky said. I think she's kind of dash. Nicky was interrupted by a voice shouting across the woods. Ow! Dinner time! Gotta go, said Alexander, scooping up his backpack. See you tomorrow. Alexander ran through the woods to his house. His dad set 2 steaming bowls of tomato soup on the table. Dig in, Al, he said. I'll grab some drinks. While his dad was in the kitchen, Alexander snuck a peek in the notebook. He was so focused on reading it that he missed his mouth with the spoon. Splarp. Soup splattered everywhere. I have to be more careful, he thought. This notebook is the SSMP's secret weapon. Alexander wiped the pages with his napkin. Bumble beaver. Busy, busy monster. Habitat, old, hollow logs. Timber. Bumble beavers build dams that are 100 feet tall. Diet, twigs dipped in honey. Behavior, these creatures buzz around the forest, smelling flowers and knocking down trees. Warning! Even if you dodge the bumble beaver's stinger, you could still get slapped by its tail. Chapter 3, The Squeals on the Bus. The next morning, Alexander's dad dropped Alexander off in the school parking lot. The students were lining up near a bus. Rip and Nicky were already there, talking to Dottie. Hey, Salamander, said Nicky. We were just telling Dottie about our new school building. It's so fancy, said Dottie. You're lucky, Dottie, said Nicky. We used to go to school in an old hospital. You're double lucky, Alexander added. You get a field trip on your first day. Dottie smiled. You're triple lucky, said Rip, that you're allowed to board the bus with that goofy-looking backpack OW. Nicky had pinched Rip's arm. Ignore him, Dottie, she said. We're glad you're here. Oh, look! She pointed to a tall, white-haired man carrying a big cooler. There's Mr. Horsley. Horsley's a huge weenie, said Rip. He's afraid of everything. Is he the bus driver? Asked Dottie. Yep, said Alexander. He's also the school secretary, nurse, gym teacher, and janitor. Alexander didn't mention that Mr. Horsley was a former member of the SSMP. Or that he seemed to be the only grown-up who could see monsters. Morning, children, said Mr. Horsley. He whistled as he boarded the bus. Whoa, said Nicky. Mr. Horsley looks so calm today. And happy, said Alexander. Mr. Horsley stuck his head out the door. All aboard, he said. The park opens in 10 minutes. The students climbed onto the bus. Dr. Tallow sat in the second row, digging through her purse. Rip plopped down in the very first seat. Let's sit up front with Dr. Tallow, guys, he said. Well, good morning, Rip, said Dr. Tallow. And hello, Alexander and Dottie. She rubbed some lotion on her hands. My skin gets so dry on warm days. Oh. Hello, Nicky. Alexander, Rip, and Dottie smiled back. Nicky gave a silent nod. Mr. Horsley started the engine. We're off, he yelled, as he drove out of the parking lot. Rip leaned forward. So does this amusement park have lots of cool rides? He shouted to Mr. Horsley. You bet, said Mr. Horsley. They have a carousel, a haunted house, a roller coaster, you name it. Yahoo! Rip yelled. For the rest of the ride. He bounced in his seat. At last, the bus came to a stop. Here we are, Mr. Horsley said. PSSSHT. The door slid open. Rip shoved past Alexander and flew down the steps. Blomp. He crashed right into a 10-foot-tall orange creature with a pointy head, white stripes, and huge, bulging eyes. Chapter 4, Safety Land. Monster, shouted Rip. Attack! He punched the creature in what he guessed was its gut. Oof, said the big orange creature. Rip, stop, cried Mr. Horsley, pulling Rip back. Everyone else climbed off the bus. Rip, said Alexander. That's no monster. Rip blinked. It's not. Mr. Horsley turned to the students. Meet Joan the safety cone. She's the mascot of this amusement park. Fiddly-ho, boys and girls, said the googly-eyed cone. Welcome to Safety Land. Rip blinked again. Wait. Did you say safety? Yup, said Joan. No wonder Mr. Horsley couldn't wait to come here, Alexander whispered to Rip and Nicky. It's the safest place on Earth. The grinning cone wheeled out a cart full of safety gear. Everyone, put on your helmets. Dr. Tallow helped pass them out. Alexander clipped on a helmet. Then he walked over to a big map. Nicky and Rip joined him. Check it out, he said. Welcome to Safety Land. The safest place on Earth. Hold on a sec, said Rip. Slow teacups? A giant cradle? Is everything in this park safe? You bet, said Joan, skipping up behind them. It's safety first. And second. And third. And oops. The top of the mascot costume fell off. The woman inside looked tired and sweaty. Crud, she said. The straps on this thing keep slipping. It's like they've been cut or something. She waved to Mr. Horsley. Sir? Could you give me a hand? Of course, said Mr. Horsley, running over. In addition to his helmet, he wore elbow pads, knee pads, and a safety vest. Rip turned back to the map. Wait, he said. How about this roller coaster? That must be a real ride. Huh, said the woman, picking up her head. Oh, sorry. The coaster is out of order. We had some track damage. Rip's eyes twitched. His fists shook. His face turned red. Safety Land is the worst, he screeched. Alexander frowned. We're at an amusement park, he thought. But I can tell this will not be an amusing day. Chapter 5, Down for the Count. Fiddly ho! Follow me, kids! Joan the safety cone led Alexander's class on a parade through the park. Alexander noticed that everything in Safety Land was soft. The handrails were soft. The pretzels were soft. The sidewalks were soft. Soft music even played in the background. At one point, Mr. Horsley sang along. Gophers have holes. Goldfish have bowls. A hamburger hides in a bun. Life can be swell if you stay in your shell 'cause safety is better than fun. Here we are, said Joan. The world's safest haunted house. The parade stopped at a cozy cottage. There were no spiderwebs, no gravestones, and no old boarded-up windows. I'll lead the way, yelled Mr. Horsley, adjusting his elbow pads. The door opened without making a creak, and Alexander's class walked inside. The room was well lit, with thick carpeting, padded walls, and clearly marked emergency exits. Alexander walked between Rip and Nicky. Not exactly spooky, is it? He said. Look, said Mr. Horsley, clapping. Magic! He pointed to a purple curtain covered with strange symbols. Tadaa. An oddly dressed man stepped through the curtain. He wore a wizard's hat, a tuxedo, and a shiny purple cape. His left arm was in a huge sling. Flomp! The curtain fell on the man's head. Oops, sorry, he said. Cheap curtain. He tossed the curtain aside. Alexander noticed a zigzag cut along one edge. Ahem, said the man. I am the wonderful, mysterious, amazing Count Chad. He took a little bow. Half a deck of cards fell out of from his sleeve. The students giggled. No laughing, snapped Count Chad. I'm not a jokey magician, I am a real magician. He wiped his brow, but his handkerchief was tied to 4 more handkerchiefs. They all became twisted in his sling. Now, Count Chad said, untangling himself. Watch me pull a rabbit from my hat. Oh, said Dottie, smiling. The magician reached into his hat and pulled out a half-eaten carrot. He said. Maybe later. Oh, said Dottie, frowning. Instead, I will predict the future. He wiggled his eyebrows as he pulled a crystal ball cape. The ball began to glow. Count Chad held the ball close to Alexander as he spoke. I see a boy. A boy who has faced terrible, difficult, monstrous challenges. Alexander looked into the ball. Cloudy shapes danced in the glass. But this boy should beware, continued Count Chad, of the dreadful, horrible, unspeakable coaster ghost. Flash! The image in the crystal ball came into focus. Everyone gasped. A skull face with bloodshot eyes stared back at Alexander. Chapter 6, T for 2. Alexander reached out to touch the crystal ball. The spooky eyes followed his finger. Hands off, said Count Chad. He jerked his arm away. Alexander noticed an electric cord running from the bottom of the crystal ball. He looked at Nikki and raised an eyebrow. What's that? Asked Nikki, pointing. Nothing, said Count Chad. He took a step back and tripped over the cord. Whomp! He fell to the floor, and the crystal ball fell with him. The ball rolled to a stop on the carpet, completely dark. An electric crystal ball? Said Nikki. Totally lame, said Rip. Alexander could see that the ball was fake. But he could not stop thinking about those creepy eyes. Clumsy me, said Count Chad, getting to his feet. Now you know how I ended up with this. He flapped his sling like a chicken wing. Dr. Tallow shook her head. That's enough magic for one day, she said. Everyone pair up with a park buddy on the way out. Joan the safety cone waved the students toward the exit. Dr. Tallow walked right over to Rip. Dearie, she said. I'd like you to be my park buddy for the day. Sure, said Rip. Let's that 100-foot bungee. I love bungee jumps, said Dr. Tallow. Really, anything stretchy. I'm going to the petting zoo, said Mr. Horsley. Who's with me? Me. Me, said Dottie. Maybe there are bunnies. Alexander gave Nikki a smile. Come on, park buddy, he said. Let's go ride something. Sure, Salamander, she said. Have fun, everyone, yelled Dr. Tallow. We'll meet at Pillow Mountain for lunch. Alexander and Nikki wandered around the park. At least there are no lines, said Alexander. They ended up at the teacup ride. Alexander and Nikki plopped down in a yellow teacup. Alexander grabbed the little chain to latch the teacup closed. Hey, look, he said. This chain's been snipped. I bet that's the most dangerous thing in Safetyland, Nikki said, rolling her eyes. Whirr. The teacups started to spin, slowly. Wait, said Alexander. The straps on Joan's costume and Count Chad's curtain had also been cut. He opened the notebook. I remember reading about a scissor monster in here. Cutterfly. Scissor-headed creature with paper wings. Habitat, recycling bins. Diet, coupons, paper dolls, homemade valentines. Fun fact. Baby cutterflies look like safety scissors. Scree. When they flutter. Warning! If a cutterfly tries to dive bomb you, throw a rock at it. Rock beats scissors. Nikki grabbed the notebook and snapped it shut. No way, Salamander, she said. A few snipped things don't equal a monster. Their teacup circled about, slow and steady. You know, Salamander, I don't think Dr. Tallow likes me, said Nikki. Really? Said Alexander. Maybe she was upset about the note passing, but dash. Hey! Weenies, shouted Rip. Clunk. The teacup came to a stop. Rip ran up to them, with Dr. Tallow lagging behind. It turns out that ride was a 100-inch bungee. Basically one big rubber band. Or maybe it used to be a 100-foot bungee, said Alexander, thinking out loud, and it got snipped by a monster. Huh? Said Rip. No. Everything here is just super safe. Maybe not